Hello and welcome to Pluribus Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Now, the title. Now, you already know because you've already seen the title and the thumbnail, and you probably already know what's coming up. This is probably going to be the longest podcast I have. And the reason why was because I was saving it for the season finale. But I know that a lot of people kind of might want to know, because I was also kind of planning to do the ranking of U.S. presidents a little later. But I decided, when? But I mean, I always include it as a thing in my Twitter polls, because I kind of do want you all to have some kind of input on what is to come. Now, what I'm going to do for the season finale now that this is going to be a earlier video, well, I don't know. Maybe I'll ask that in a Twitter poll in the future. Probably do like a live stream or something. You can take like questions and stuff. So, with this, like I said, with this thing, with what the episode is about, it's of course going to be the longest, it's probably going to be the longest episode, and if it's not the longest episode, this whole thing will be pointless. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be the longest. Almost as long as FDR's tenure. Well, with that said, again, but we gotta do the whole traditional other kind of podcast stuff before we do that. So let's get right into the news. Now, the first one is, well, this one's probably going to get my video, hopefully this will not get my video taken down, but if it does, well, I mean, that's why I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to play it.
District 18A State Representative. I'm not asking for you to vote for me as your leader. I'm asking for you to vote for me as your public servant. The primary duty of a state representative is to protect all the rights of his constituents. I want to be your state representative. I want to be your public servant. And I want to be your nigger.
Yes, you heard that right. He said, I want to be your Negro. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Well, I would if I was in private or maybe with friends, but I'm not gonna say it in a YouTube video unless I was paid to. I mean, like, personally, I don't adhere to the whole words have a sacred thing. But, you know, I'm just doing it in the sense of, like, I don't want any, you know, people accusing me of being a racist. Maybe I'll say in, like I said, I mean, that whole thing, I'm trying to be semi-professional here. Okay, semi-professional, but I'm just saying, I just personally don't want to say it at the moment. I don't know why I'm defending it. It's my channel. I'll say whenever I want. But anyways, getting aside from that point, watch. Alex Jones and Marco Rubio nearly come to blows in Senate hallway. Now, I don't want to play this video again. I don't want to play another video, but I'm just going to recite some things that happened, like, You're not gonna get arrested, man. You're not gonna arrest out again. Oh, no. Like, basically, they got into a little bit of a hissy fit with each other. Marco Rubio was like, "Who's this guy?" And he's like, "Oh, you don't know who I am." But yeah, it's just kind of funny that this happened, especially considering I still remember Marco Rubio as like the guy who's like, "Now let's dispel this rumor once and for all that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing." Okay. I guess now we'll just move on to the next one. Arizona governor names former Senator John Keel as McCain's replacement. Arizona Republican Governor Doug Ducey chose former U.S. Senator John Keel to replace the late John McCain in the Senate. The governor said as the news conference Tuesday. Now, for me, this is both kind of a bad thing, but it also kind of has a secret good thing, because John Keel, if you look at GovTrack, he's one of the most conservative governors, not governors, one of the most conservative senators that was in the Senate at the time. That I think is a bad thing, but a good thing, but here's a good thing. Since McCain's term was supposed to end in 2020, John Keel is going to only serve until 2020, and John Keel has made it explicitly clear that he has no intentions of serving a full term. So when the 2020 election rolls around, he's not going to run again. So I guess that's something. Now, with this, I kind of encourage one thing. I implore Raul Grijalva, run for the Senate seat. Please. I want you to. Please. Anywho, we're going to be going over some primary results. For me, there's really only one that I was kind of even remotely paying attention to. And that was the Senate race. And, of course, Elizabeth Warren won. Woohoo! Woohoo! Yay! I mean, she was uncontested, but still. Pretty much all the other races that were here, I wasn't really paying attention to. Because, well, there wasn't much to say. I wasn't endorsing any candidate. At least at the time. You see, because there were a couple candidates that were kind of interesting that I did know. Like, for one, there's Joseph Kennedy III. I'm not endorsing him, but I mean, like I said, interesting because the fact that it's still Kennedy. There was Juana Matias, who was a Justice Democrat in the 3rd District. Her district never actually made it to actual amount of votes that was actually able to decide a winner, so they might be having a runoff, but I don't think she's going to be included in the runoff, because I believe runoffs usually have like 1 or 2, the first 2, but yeah. Anyways, but speaking of, like I said, endorsements at the time, because now I'm actually, because after that thing, I like pretty much with every Justice Democrat that I never pay quite enough attention to. I always do this. Like, if they make it to the general, they will get their name put on my website. So, and the one that managed to do that was Ayanna Pressley, city council member. Now, she does have flaws. She endorsed Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election, but so did Andrew Gillum, and I'm not going to fault them for that. But I'm also endorsing Amara Campa-Najjar. He was a Obama aide, but I'm not going to blame him for that, because I'm pretty sure he wasn't the one who had his finger on the button with the drone strikes. But anyways, now let's move on to the political party of the day. Because oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, this video might come out after it is decided on whether or not Kavanaugh is confirmed. But I am recording this like 10:15 p.m. on the 5th of September. So I do not know if Kavanaugh gets confirmed or denied. So don't put in the comments like, but what about Brett Kavanaugh? Because I don't know. I don't know. We're going to be going over the political party of the day. It is called the Serve America Movement. It was founded by Morgan Stanley lawyer Eric Grossman in April of 2017. Because here's the thing. This is actually, according to Wikipedia, this is the most recent political party of the United States. So yeah, that's actually really interesting. Well, I mean, aside from ones like that are unofficial parties, like the Party of Reason and Progress and For People's Party, but I'm pretty sure For People's Party was created before the 2016 election. Not before the 2016 election, but like before, 2017. But anyways, no, whatever. Okay, so its major ideology is a big tent party. Like the majority of their party has neoconservatism and liberal conservatism as their major ideologies, with some social liberalism sprinkled in there. To which I say, why are they going to a major party if neoconservatism is their thing? Why don't they just go to one of the two major parties? They are politically placed in the center to center right. Like, because it is actually endorsed by, not one that's endorsed, it was created by former Bush staffers. W, not the HW. Okay, so their major goal is to try and attract moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats, i.e. all Democrats and, some Republicans. But their idea is to try and be like, we're going to take what we need to stop with these political divide and bridge the bridge between two parties, like the Donna Brazile and Sarah Palin thing. It's like, they think it's because the one party's too far left and the other one's too far right, and not because of the fact that they're both corporate parties bought and sold by the same people, and they need to put on this big horse and pony show. Okay, so you see, the thing about the party is that it's also really vague on what it actually wants to do, much like every centrist philosophy, which is why I don't particularly like if you're a centrist, that's fine. Leave me a comment and explain why you're centrist. But the problem with centrists is that they're always like, when I look at left wingers, they're icky. But when I look at the right wingers, they're also icky. I'm super enlightened. It's like, yeah, but what are your policies? Because I can guarantee you, if you went by policy, you probably aren't a centrist. You're just a left winger or a right winger that just doesn't want to associate yourself with them. Which, I mean, I get the idea, but you could also not be that. Like, for example, I call myself a progressive, but there are also a lot of people with the blue hair and the ones that are like, keep your hate speech off of this campus, that also call themselves progressive. But I'm not going to be like, well, I'm not a progressive because they're progressive. No, I'm going to logically point to the evidence of the ideology and how it works and da-da-da-da. You can see, their ideology explains, like, address income inequality, innovating healthcare, improving the education system, remaining fiscally responsible, promoting diversity, embracing free markets, providing a simple and fair tax, supporting liberal democracy, undertaking criminal justice reform, pushing for electoral reform, including the sore loser law, and rejecting isolationism. The sore loser law, for those who don't know, is the idea that if you lose a primary, you cannot run as another, like, for example, like, let's say in the 2016 election, Bernie Sanders decided that he was going to run for the Green Party. The smart idea. But a sore loser law would basically say, no, you can't do that. Many states have a sore loser law. Like, individual states have a sore loser law, but nothing really too important. They managed to get enough names to be qualified as a major, not a major party, but like a minor party in the New York gubernatorial race, where they're running Stephanie Minor, who's the former mayor. She used to be the former chair of the New York Democratic Party and was mayor of Syracuse. But like, she's like just whatever. I mean, I don't really care about her really that much. But now, I've wasted like 16 minutes, so let's get into what you actually wanted to hear. Who would I have voted for in every single presidential election, with a brief rant about something that bothered me. Oh, wait, by the way, I encourage you, Mr. Beat, to take the challenge. Go through every single presidential election in United States history and pick your candidates. Like, you see, the reason why I did this is because there was a question on Quora that I answered. Well, technically 3, but like, the question was, who would you have supported in every single presidential election in United States history? Now, the answers that are on the question are like the generic, like, I would have voted for the Democrat in every presidential election. I would have voted for the Republican. And I was thinking about the question. I was thinking, like, yeah, who would I have supported? Because there are a lot of candidates that range from, you know, moderately kind of thinking to, like, actually, like, staunch progressives. So I was like, hold on, let me bookmark this. Let me do my individual research. So I started researching into, like, candidates, parties, and all this other stuff to do, and was thinking about, like, which candidate, like, the actual, like, it's not actually asking, because, like, you know, it's the idea, the question is outlandish in itself. Like, you're gonna travel back in time, and the first thing you're gonna do is, I gotta vote in this presidential election. The question's really asking, like, which of the candidates in these elections do you ideologically fit the closest to? Which really bothers me, because one person, he answered the question like this. Like, he gave your standard, like, oh, I would have voted for George Washington this election, I would have voted for James Monroe this election, I would have voted for Democrats in these elections. But then one actually, like, piqued my interest, because he was like, because in the 1924 election, he would have voted for James Cox, who you may know is a conservative Democrat who was kind of like pretty much in line with Calvin Coolidge. Now I was thinking, oh, maybe he put him there because he doesn't know James Cox's ideology, and maybe I can give him some pointers and maybe point him to Robert M. Follett. But I was reading his answer, and his answer literally said in parentheses, I know ideologically I would have liked Robert M. Follett, but in order not to split the Democratic vote, I would have voted for James Cox. It's like, James Cox lost that election. Literally, this scenario would only add one vote to James Cox or Robert M. Follett. It's make pretend, it's not real. This isn't an actual scenario. You're not actually going to go travel back in time and do that. The first thing you're going to do is try and tell someone that 9/11 happens. And or use winning lottery numbers. But anyways, now there's also one other thing. Some of these candidates might be thinking, because I learned when I was on our campaigns, because I have an our campaigns account, so I can, like, you know, endorse candidates and just chat and stuff. But, like, here's the thing. Like, I learned not every candidate that I would have supported was on the ballot in North Carolina. So basically, the scenario is, oh, and also the fact that I'm Hispanic and just turned 18, and a lot of these elections were before 18 was the voting age. So basically, it's like, if I managed to meet the requirements to vote, who would I have voted for? And I'll also give a brief explanation about who they are, or not really who they are, but like why them in particular. So anyways, now let's get on. First off, I'm skipping the 1900s already. Oh boy, I'm like, and here's the thing you'll notice: they're not all the same. I mean, I know they're not all the same, but like, they're not all the same party. They're not all. You'll see what I mean in a second. In the 1788 and 89 presidential election, I would have voted for George Washington. What a surprise! I mean, to be honest, literally everybody would have voted for George Washington in that election. Pretty much the only technically, like, I guess if I have to use the term, the only realistic other chance that would have actually received results might have actually been John Adams. But I mean, I've never voted for John Adams. But anyways, in the 1792 election, I would have again voted for George Washington. Now, because, well, again, Washington really didn't have that many opponents that seemed like a good radical change. Now, the 1796 election, I would have voted for Thomas Jefferson, my favorite founding father. Why? Well, you see, because it was always the strange thing for me, because, like, technically, when the Federalists talk and the Democratic Republicans talk, I'm like, yes, 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 no, 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 yes, yes, no. Like, both parties have something that I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And then they also have another thing I'm like, no, that makes absolutely zero sense. And it just so happens that the Federalist Party had a lot of, especially, like, because the Federalist Party had a lot of technically good things, but they were also, like, doing it for, like, rich asshole-ish nature. But, you know, the Democratic Republicans at least had some kind of, you know, moral on the, like technically there was a political test I took that literally it called me a Washington moderate, because out of the two parties I literally was like, well, yeah, the common man is good, the rich assholes are just the rich assholes, but also no, the big government is, like a federal government that can do a lot of things is a good idea. Like, pretty much, I probably would have been a Federalist that supported the Bill of Rights, I guess you could technically call me. But anyways, this is the election that Thomas Jefferson lost, by the way. And in the election of 1800, I would have voted again for Thomas Jefferson. Same reasons apply. And 1804, I would have again voted for Thomas Jefferson. But it's because around this time that Federalist policies were kind of seeping into the Democratic Republicans. Because, you know, Thomas Jefferson actually ended up doing the Louisiana Purchase, which is something that he did not, which was like, hey, that's not in the Constitution, what the F, bro? So he actually had to break his rule, and I mean, I guess it makes sense, because the Democratic Republican philosophy was kind of flawed in a lot of aspects. You know, the government has to be explicitly, there are a lot of things that the government has to do that the Constitution does not explicitly say. They knew this, and that's why they ended up doing what they did. And I commend Jefferson for that. He knew that a certain aspect of his ideology was wrong, and he corrected it. In 1808, I would have voted for... I know I promised that I wouldn't play any more videos, but I just had to. I just really had to. Because, well, the song kind of explains it. James Madison was also pragmatic in a lot of his views. And, well, that's pretty much it. 1812, again. Okay, now, the next one is actually the big controversial one, because technically, this one's everybody who knows me apparently says that I'm supposed to be voting for the other guy, but this one, I happen to want to vote for this one. Everybody says I should vote for Rufus King in the 1816 election, but personally, I prefer James Monroe. Especially considering I know how the Monroe presidency turned out and how it wasn't that bad. And, well, and you can't really bring myself to vote for a Federalist because the Federalist literally picked one president and he's ranked so low on my list, Donald Trump has a chance of being higher than him. I mean, kind of, but you know. In 1920, I would have again voted for James Monroe because many people don't realize he was the only candidate. The third time that happened in American history, actually. So, in 1824, I would have voted for John Quincy Adams. Now, why specifically John Quincy Adams when there were a lot of other people I could have voted for? You know, like Henry Clay. Well, Clay and Quincy Adams seemed relatively similar, you know, and, you know, by the time Quincy Adams became around, it was pretty clear that the Federalist Party pretty much merged with the Democratic-Republican Party, and he was pretty much just I guess what you could technically say Joe Manchin is to the Democratic Party, or Joe Lieberman. So, yeah. In 1828, I would have voted for the National Republican Party candidate, John Quincy Adams. Now, again, it was because a lot of John Quincy Adams... Oh, and by the way, also John Quincy Adams was also kind of against slavery. I say kind of because, well, I mean, he wasn't doing much to actually oppose slavery. But in his personal life, he was against slavery. You know, much like John Adams was. In 1832, I would have voted for a person who I literally just said was very similar to John Quincy Adams, Henry Clay. Now, Clay is, of course, the well-known figure for being a member of the Whigs and, you know, being like one of the big senators in U.S. history. But, I mean, he's really only shows up in this list like this time. And even then, it was kind of like because he was truly the only candidate combating Andrew Jackson. No, wait. It wasn't Andrew. I don't think it. No. Yes? Yeah. I think. I remember Andrew Jackson being the candidate. I was confused because I thought 1824 Andrew Jackson won, but no, I was like, oh wait, John Quincy Adams won. Oops. But anyways, in 1836, I would have voted for the Whig Party candidate. I know that doesn't narrow it down. I mean, you might think, like, just because I said from North Carolina, you might think, oh, I would have voted for Hugh White, or is it White? Hugh? No, Hugh White. But I would have voted for Daniel Webster. Why Daniel Webster? Especially considering Daniel Webster is like a traditionalist conservative. Well, let me explain. Because traditionalist conservative technically is kind of a paleocon. And paleocon I technically agree with more than most conservative ideologies. And he also, at this point in time, was anti-slavery. It wasn't until later that he actually kind of rescinded anti-slavery. So yeah, speaking of anti-slavery, you're going to be seeing that in the next couple members of the list. Now, the first one is James G. Birney, in the 1840 election, Liberty Party candidate, he was a staunch abolitionist, like a true-hearted blood abolitionist. Oh, dang it! This shows how unstructured this video is. I was supposed to, at the beginning, mention honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut of being people I would have voted for. I guess I'll do that now, because why not? I already stopped in the middle of the list. So, these are the ones that I would have voted for, but they just quite missed it. And they are, I believe, people say Jordan McGovern is a lot more left than I give him credit for, and Michael Dukakis too, but I don't really see that with them, though. I don't see them, like, reliably as progressive left-wingers. I see them, again, as corporate establishment people who are, kind of left. George McGovern technically has one thing, because he was actually against the war. But, the next one, I believe, is Bill Bradley. In the 2000 election, he was super for universal health care, but he didn't like gay people. And I believe the last one is... Oh, wait, not technically not the last one, but Howard Dean in 2004. Like, he was really progressive on a lot of things, but there's just a couple other people that were more progressive than him. And lastly, in 2008, John Edwards. He was for universal health care, but he wasn't really for any other progressive reforms at the time. But anyways, back to the list that I rudely interrupted. Now you could say, well, why don't you just move this to the front? I don't feel like it. I already did some major editing in this podcast, but I'm gonna just keep. Personally, I like keeping my editing in my podcast to a minimum, because I want you to get the unbridled me. Unleash the beast. But anyways, in the 1844 election, I would have again for the Liberty Party candidate James G. Birney. I mean, pretty much the same reason why I would have voted for him in 1840. Okay. The next candidate is, in 1848, I would have voted for Garrett Smith of the Liberty Party. He was also, staunchly anti-slavery. I believe he was also, James G. Birney, like he was related to James G. Birney. Yeah. In 1852, I would have voted for, okay, get ready for this, John P. Hale of the Free Soil Party. Now, many people, you might be thinking, wait, wasn't the Free Soil Party also in the last election, 1848? Yeah, well, by that time, Martin Van Buren's never really made it clear that he was anti-slavery, and, why would you trust what a person says just at that moment? You gotta actually fight for the problems at the moment. You gotta unleash, you gotta fight for the people. You gotta fight for the people, dog. But anyways, in the 1856 election, again, being anti-slavery, I would have voted for John C. Fremont of the Republican Party. Oh no! But, this is a different Republican Party than what the Republican Party of today is. It's a different one. So no anti-gay, anti-climate change stuff yet. I mean, they were probably anti-gay at the time, but, it was actually, really late in the game. Really early in the game for, to even think of that. In the 1860 election, I would have voted for Abraham Lincoln or Garrett Smith. Now, why did I specifically add Garrett Smith when most people who were anti-slavery probably would have just said, oh, I would have voted for Abraham Lincoln. Well, that's because Abraham Lincoln wasn't against slavery. At least not yet. He was anti-slavery expansion, with the eventual idea of ending slavery. He wasn't anti-slavery in general. Garrett Smith was, despite the fact that he was not actively campaigning due to poor health. So I covered both my bases. Speaking of covering both my bases, in the 1864 election, I would have, one, supported John C. Fremont of the Radical Democracy Party, and then Abraham Lincoln. Now, why did I include that caveat? Because John C. Fremont dropped out of the race very late in the game. He ran because he felt that Abraham Lincoln was not going far enough. Now, I also probably would have been one of those people who says, Lincoln, you're not going far enough. Which is why I would have probably supported Fremont. But, due to the fact that Abraham Lincoln and the National Union Party was pretty much dominant, and they didn't want to give their votes away to the possible war Democrat the possible peace Democrat George McClellan, John C. Fremont decided to drop out. Now I would have been like, yo, John, what the F, bro? But anyways, in the 1868 election, now this is actually a hard one. In the 1836 election, I actually had a really hard time picking candidates, because it just didn't seem great. Now, I eventually decided on one for 1868, and that was Ulysses S. Grant of the Republican Party. But that was because he was for Reconstruction. Reconstruction. We gotta help the Southern. We gotta help the South. We pretty much destroyed their part of the country. We gotta, at the very least, help them out, rebuild it. How else are we gonna integrate them back to the United States? Like, really, how are we gonna have them be a good part of the country if we're not gonna help them rebuild? I mean, it's not like they're gonna have some big malice against us and then declare that the South will rise again and create an incredibly racist group. But anyways, the 1872 election. Now here's the thing. You notice that in the top one it was kind of boring. This is where, because I actually color-coded it. If you want, I can include a link to a view-only version of my documents, of this document, but it gets really colorful at the end, near the end of this. In 1872, I would have voted for Victoria Woodhull of the Equal Rights Party. Now, this is interesting because technically she wasn't legally allowed to become president. This would have been more of a protest vote. But I would have went over there and cast my vote gladly. Anyways, next election, a more serious candidate. In 1876, I would have voted for Peter Cooper of the Greenback Party, because, the Greenback Party is a left-wing group that was adherently for currency reform. And, currency reform is, something I was, they have democratic socialism in there. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. In 1880, I would have voted for James B. Weaver of the Greenback Party. You get used to hearing James B. Weaver this isn't going to be the last time you see him, by the way. In 1884, I would have voted for Benjamin Franklin Butler of the Greenback Party. Now here's the thing about Benjamin Franklin Butler. He was a soldier. I believe he was from the Union. I don't think he was from the Confederacy. Possibly he was from the Confederacy, but I don't know. And this is kind of a sad thing. Like, one day in high school, I literally just decided that I would have these guys as my phone backgrounds at one point. I was semi-embarrassed to have Benjamin Franklin Butler because of the fact that he is, and I'm just going to say this in the nicest way I can, if I were to put all these people in a contest over looks, Benjamin Franklin Butler would be the ugliest presidential candidate in U.S. history. Just look at a picture of him. I'll wait. You done? Good. In 1888, I would have voted for Alson Streeter of the Union Labor Party, because unlike the United Labor Party, the Union Labor Party was a direct connection between the Greenback Party and the next party. In 1892, I would have voted for James B. Weaver of the People's/Populist Party, because, again, left-wing group, populism, fighting for the people, fighting for the poor farmers, something that these guys gotta do. In 1896, I would have voted for William Jennings Bryan of the Democratic and Populist Party. Now this is kind of interesting, because I remember when I was learning about William Jennings Bryan in school. William Jennings Bryan, I remember, like, here's pretty much what happened. The teacher would teach me about William Jennings Bryan, but I would, like, look at him and be like, ugh, this fucking idiot. Because he was, like, this cross of gold speech, and, you know, how he was a religious zealot and stuff. And how he was, like, super anti-evolution in the Scopes monkey trial. But I completely ignored, like, the actual substance of what he was saying. I kind of regret it, because I really like William Jennings Bryan. Like, definitely, with the whole Scopes monkey trial, I would have been like, William, I love you, dude. You're a great politician, but this is just stupid. In the 1900 election, I would have voted for William Jennings Bryan of the Democratic and Populist candidate, or Eugene V. Debs of the Social Democratic Party of America. Because if I include or, that means I literally am, like, so torn between the two candidates that I cannot decide. It's because Eugene V. Debs is fighting for a lot of issues that I like, and he was a Democratic Socialist, Glean Social Democratic, and William Jennings Bryan was a staunch populist. Like, they literally tackled what their respective areas were. William Jennings Bryan, farmer, populism. Eugene V. Debs, socialism, social democratic, labor unions. They had different areas to attack, and if they merged and combined their powers, they would have won. Which is what eventually ended up happening at one point. Not with these two explicitly, but like with labor unions teaming up with farmers. In the 1904 election, I would have voted for Teddy Roosevelt of the Republican Party or Eugene V. Debs of the Socialist Party. Now, again, because Teddy Roosevelt was a staunch progressive and was fighting for the progressive ideals of progressivism, despite the fact that the Republican Party is, kind of the antithesis of that now. And Debs of the Socialist Party because, I like Eugene V. Debs, he's cool. And in the 1908 election, I would have again voted for William Jennings Bryan, purely of the Democratic Party this time, or, again, Eugene V. Debs. Because, again, with this, they were, attacking the, groups and powers that would needed to be fighting in both of their respective areas. They're both fighting well, even though William Jennings Bryan made some mistakes again with the Scopes monkey trial and, Woodrow Wilson. But what was that? I mean, I like Woodrow Wilson just fine, but 1912 begs to differ. In 1912, I would have voted for Teddy Roosevelt of the Bull Moose Party or Eugene V. Debs of the Socialist Party. Now, again, same reason with Teddy Roosevelt and Jimmy Debs back then. They were like really good figures for the American left. Despite the fact that many people don't even consider, like if I went up to a normal person, they probably wouldn't even consider Teddy Roosevelt a member of the American left, just because of the fact that he's a Republican. And I say bullcorn because, well, in 1916, I would have voted for Alan L. Benson of the Socialist Party. Now, why him? You already know about Eugene V. Debs. Why Alan L. Benson? Because there was no other candidate that I really agreed with as much as Alan Benson. Technically, one kind of fit the bill, Woodrow Wilson, but this is the brilliant part of doing all this now. I get to do this in hindsight. So hindsight is 2020, and of course, the whole slogan of "He kept us out of war" didn't ending up happening. So, if he couldn't keep us out of the war, if he did actually fulfill his promise of keeping us out of the war, I probably would have tried to at least somewhat incorporate Woodrow Wilson in there. In 1920, I would have voted for convict number 9653, better known as Eugene B. Debs of the Socialist Party, or Parley P. Christensen of the Farmer Labor Party. Now, Parley P. Christensen and the Farmer Labor Party in general are, like they're, I mean, you don't know, that's what I'm trying to tell you. They are a social democratic party that was kind of like the Populist Party 2.0, but not as big a scale. I was kind of reluctant to endorse Parley P. Christensen because, I kind of wanted one ticket where I kind of wanted one time on this list to have Eugene B. Debs be the only candidate I would have supported. But it's because Parley P. Christensen is like kind of closer to me in ideology. It's like he's kind of closer to me in ideology due to the fact that it's social democratic versus the democratic socialist nature of Eugene B. Debs. By the way, I will be pointing out the fact that he's technically a democratic socialist and not a social democrat, as I said before in a future video. But anyways, in 1924, I would have voted for Robert M. Follett Sr. of the Second Progressive Party. I don't know why I had to specifically say senior, because I say senior because it's pretty much his title to me. He's the senior and staunch progressive. I've explained his legislative accomplishments in my senator's video, so go watch that. Now, 1928 is kind of interesting because this one also had a big change. I originally had Norman Thomas of the Socialist Party in here. No, yeah. But with the Farmer Labor Party being discovered with me, and I decided to vote for the Farmer Labor Party candidate, Frank Webb. Now, here's the thing about Frank Webb. If you look him up, he doesn't have a Wikipedia article. He doesn't have really much mention. It's like he doesn't exist. I've managed to track one picture with a watermark of him. Now, that's pretty much it. There's not much to say about him. Now, 1932 to 48 elections, I would have voted for Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Because Franklin D. Roosevelt is the best president of the United States. You can say that another president is not your favorite, but Franklin D. Roosevelt is the best president of the United States. He led us out of the Great Depression. People say, oh, well, maybe if we let the free market roll around, then maybe the Depression would have ended faster. No, it wouldn't have. That's a stupid thought. It's not true. Herbert Hoover wasn't doing enough. Now, the only thing is, 1936 has a small caveat because technically, if Huey Long managed to fulfill his idea for running for president, I might have been split enough to put an or and have Huey Long there. Because, well, Huey Long is, technically slightly further left than me. But, I'm gonna let it slide for a bit. In 1948, I would have voted for Henry A. Wallace of the Third Progressive Party. Now, the Third Progressive Party, and Henry Wallace, because there's this whole controversy of was he bought by the socialists? Was he bought by communists? Was he a communist body? No. I'm gonna make a whole video about it, and when I talk about all the progressive parties, but I'm gonna be very clear. He was not a communist. He was not a socialist. He was not bought by the Communist Party. In fact, that very adherently goes against communism. Henry Wallace was a progressive, fighting for progressive values. He was the first candidate on this list that wasn't a communist or socialist that adherently called for universal health care. That speaks for something. 1948. In 1952, I would have voted for, and we're going to do another caveat, this is another kind of thing that could happen, I would have voted for Estes Kefauver in the primaries, but I would have voted for Vincent Hallinan in the general election. Vincent Hallinan was the candidate for the Third Progressive Party, because this Progressive Party actually lasted longer than one election. Vincent Hallinan was also an adherent atheist, by the way, and Estes Kefauver had Kefauver, I told you very clear. The election was stolen from him, and he was a staunch progressive and second best senator, in my opinion. In 1956, I would have voted for Estes Kefauver in the primary, and then Adlai Stevenson II in the general. Now, technically, this one also had a caveat, because originally, Adlai Stevenson II was not there. Instead, I had the Socialist Party candidate, Darlington Hoops. That was because I was under the impression that Adlai Stevenson was truly just another corporate Democrat and blah blah blah. But then it was actually thanks to Mr. Beat who showed me his platform, because I was like, okay, I'll support him because Estes Kefauver was his vice president. That's a good start. But what is his platform? And literally nobody had his platform. It wasn't until I found Mr. Beat's video where he explained, this is where I discovered Mr. Beat. I had seen the video, but I just wasn't paying attention to the Adlai Stevenson part, I guess. Stevenson called for ending the draft, lowering military spending, ending nuclear bomb testing, and expanding social programs. That's a good thing. Truly, I guess, technically, Adlai Stevenson and Estes Kefauver can be defined by the split between progressivism and liberalism, because my political science teacher, he's my American government teacher, he explains how he's it's good to use it as the same thing for an introductory course, but you'll pretty soon find out in later courses that it's not exactly the same. And that's kind of the same thing between Kefauver and Stevenson. Kefauver was just louder and more convicted in his progressive stances. In the 1960 election, I would have voted for John F. Kennedy. Now, John F. Kennedy's kind of closer. Technically, he's the closest thing to, kind of a, he's further to, he's technically he's to the right of, I believe, Adlai Stevenson. Noticeably to the right of Estes Kefauver, but to the right of Adlai Stevenson. But he's still had a progressive, stint of goodness, even though he wasn't a big staunch fighter of a lot of the bad things of civil rights and stuff like that, but he had a lot of big, he did have a lot of accomplishments that were really good. Peace Corps, social programs, But he, again, he was also kind of defined on the idea of liberal versus progressive. Speaking of progressive, in the 1964 election, I would have voted for Lyndon B. Johnson, the one who's my second favorite president and my favorite song from Mr. Beat. But, Lyndon B. Johnson was, well, again, Great Society, Medicaid, Medicare, good. I like it. More please. However, again, we have to acknowledge the fact that, well, war happened, so in the 1968 election, I would have voted for Eugene. This is technically another caveat. In the primaries, I would have voted for Eugene McCarthy, but there's also a backup candidate. I included this because it's like a candidate that I could have supported in the primary if this more progressive one wasn't the... It's basically an excuse to have more ideologically good candidates on my list. The candidate that I was supported the most is Eugene McCarthy, but there was also a slight chance I could have supported Robert F. Kennedy in the primaries, because Bobby Kennedy, of course, was also a very staunch progressive, kind of different enough from his brother to be a actual, good, progressive thing. But he did have a lot of bad things. He did... One thing I will give Bobby Kennedy credit for is, in the 1968 election, and he called this out to Eugene McCarthy during the debate, he was like, Eugene, it is good. You are trying to pull out of Vietnam, but you're not acknowledging the fact about what are you going to do after we pull out of Vietnam? My plan is, after we get out of Vietnam, we expand the social programs, give these funding to the poor and needy. What is your plan? But of course, neither of them won the election. And in general, I would have supported, surprisingly, Dick Gregory of the Freedom and Peace Party. Now, technically, the Peace and Freedom Party of candidate of Eldridge Cleaver, I could have also supported, but he was he was too young to assume the office of the presidency. And it's just Dick Gregory also was truly, he fought for these progressive ideals while also being old enough to actually win the presidency. In the 1972 election, I would have voted for Shirley Chisholm in the primaries, due to the fact that she was a staunch progressive fighter in the Congressional Black Caucus and other jazz. And I would have voted for pediatrician Benjamin Spock in the general election, because Benjamin Spock is the quintessential left-wing activist. If there wasn't a protest or activity that Benjamin Spock wasn't there for, I guess it must have not been as left-wing enough. Civil rights causes, anti-war causes. Benjamin Spock was quintessential in these left-wing groups, in these left-wing powers. I kind of consider him the token white guy of the civil rights cause, because there are a lot of these pictures of him and Martin Luther King Jr. together. And I do like Benjamin Spock. He does seem like a nice guy. One thing I do have to give him he also took a staunch stance on circumcision. That was a good thing. But one thing I gotta give him not props for, is he kind of, and this has nothing to do with his politics, but it has something to do with his medical degree, because he's a pediatrician. He kind of accidentally led to an outbreak of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. you see, because it happens when babies lie on their stomach. And he told them, don't let your kids lie on their back because they might throw up and die. So lie them on their stomach. Now parents nowadays know, no, you gotta lay them on their side. but Benjamin Spock didn't know that. Oops. And also interesting, Benjamin Spock and me kind of had a similar outbreak. Mr. Beat might like this because Benjamin Spock originally supported Calvin Coolidge, but then he took he took a left turn and just never went back. In the 1976 election, I would have voted for Eugene McCarthy's independent campaign because Eugene McCarthy is, again, a big progressive kind of guy. Would have fought for the, ideals that I would have wanted. You see, technically, the People's Party... Oh, wait. I forgot to mention, Benjamin Spock was of the People's Party. The People's Party is technically a progressive to socialist party, and Margaret Wright kind of made it more clear that she was an open socialist, where Benjamin Spock was kind of like, well, I mean, they kind of towed the line. Benjamin Spock was like, yeah, universal health care, legal abortion, but, he kind of towed the line on being openly a socialist, on being, at least openly calling himself a socialist. He'd be like, well, Democratic kind, but whatever. Eugene McCarthy was just like, no, I'm just progressive. In the 1980 election, I would have voted for Barry Commoner of the Citizens Party. Environmentalist, fought for the rights of the trees. You gotta give him props for that. It gave the people a progressive party that wasn't too far to the left, wasn't too far to the right. Great. In the 1984 election, I would have voted for Jesse Jackson in the primaries. I know this is kind of a big thing because he's known for race baiting, but on the actual policies, he's correct. Universal health care, Palestinian state, legal weed, good. But I would have voted for Sonia Johnson, the general, which is also kind of strange because it's like radical feminist. But this is technically if these two people were running today, they'd be called the social justice warrior candidates. But these guys are just, they do adhere correctly to the issues. The issues they fought for were good. In the 1988 election, I would have voted for Jesse Jackson again, and Eugene McCarthy of the Consumers Party. Now, this is actually kind of funny. When I was on my way between classes in college, I was watching, because I was kind of curious, should Eugene McCarthy be on this part of the list? Because he kind of... Does this count as a real run? Or was this an unofficial run? Because the Wikipedia articles made it unclear. But he did have a press conference that officially showed that he was running for the Consumers Party ticket. And this is the funny part. When asked by reporters, why are you running under the Consumers Party ticket instead of running as a Democrat, he said, I'm running under the Consumers Party for two reasons. One, because they asked me to. And two, because I feel that we need a strong third party. And it's like, yeah, that's great. It's hilarious. In 1992, I would have voted for Lenora Fulani of the New Alliance Party. No, not the one in Mexico, but this is a radically different one. Now, even though this is a socialist feminist party, you'll notice this. Sometimes I'll support candidates that are further to the left than me. But that's because Cal Kalinske also made it kind of clear, if you support a socialist, you might only get a progressive ideology. If you support a progressive, there might be a chance that you might get a neoliberal one. In 1996, I would have voted for Ralph Nader of the Green Party. Now, this was his first run for president that was official. It's, well, I mean, there's not much to say. Ralph Nader, big consumer advocate, big progressive, wants the two-party system to fall as much as I do. But, you know, this isn't the run that is the big one. And this one is this one's gonna make a couple of my friends mad. Maybe. At least make my American government teacher mad. In the 2000 election, I would have voted for Ralph Nader. I don't care what you say, Mr. Beat's correct. Ralph Nader did not spoil the election of 2000. There's multiple pieces of evidence to back up the claim. And a lot of evidences that contradict your claim of him spoiling. But anyways, in the 2004 election, I would have voted for Dennis Kucinich in the primaries, and Ralph Nader, who was the independent candidate, in the general. Both staunch progressives. One was really big Catholic. I'm not that, obviously. But, you know, in the 2008 presidential election, I would have voted for Dennis Kucinich in the primary. Mike Gravel would have been a backup candidate in both of his party runs. And Ralph Nader, I would have voted for him in the general. Now, even though Mike Gravel eventually shifted to the Libertarian Party and was like he did try to hide the fact that he was for universal health care when he was at the Libertarian Party and campaigning more on his social issues rather than his economic ones. But, you know, Mike Gravel's gotta try and win somewhere. I personally always like to divide them into the categories of the two corporate bot politicians that happen to be of a minority, you know, Hillary Clinton and Obama. The ones that are corporate enough to be manipulated, but not corporate enough to truly be trustworthy to win, which would be Joe Biden and John Edwards. The progressives that we gotta keep out, that the Democrats are like, the Democrats gotta try and keep out of the White House, otherwise they'll actually try to change things for the better. And that would be Dennis Kucinich and Mike Gravel. And then the ones that had absolutely no chance of winning because they're boring and stupid, like Christopher Dodd and Bill Richardson. Now, in the 2012 election, this is where it gets interesting, because I would have voted for John Wolfe Jr. in the primaries with Darcy Richardson, another Democratic challenger, as a backup candidate, Rocky Anderson of the Justice Party, or Jill Stein in the general election. Now, originally, Darcy Richardson was the only one, but then I discovered John Wolfe Jr., and I was like, oof, gotta vote for that guy. Because, you know, I would consider me and John Wolfe, like, at least kind of friends. You know, at the very least, online friends. And I'm pretty sure John Wolfe feels the same way. I mean, even if he doesn't, whatever. He's got important things to do, like run for Senate, run for president. Rocky Anderson is technically the more in line with my ideas than Jill Stein, which is why I put the or, because Jill Stein also aligns relatively close to Rocky Anderson, but she's just like slightly to the left of me. Like just like slightly to the left of me. Like imagine like Mr. B, you're a school teacher. Imagine like the two students sitting next to each other. Just like that. They're like two to the left, but not quite. Now, in the 2016 election, I would have voted for, no surprise, Bernie Sanders in the primaries, but also a special shout out to Lawrence Lessig, the not so progressive backup, and Jill Stein of the Green Party in the general. Okay. Now this is where I'm going to get interesting, because in total that's 49 people, unless I counted wrong. So, yes, that is wrong. It should be 50 people. I'm leaving that in because I like people knowing that I make mistakes. So that's 50 people in total. Now, I actually made a bunch of charts. Not actual charts, but like, faux table charts and stuff that divided them based on multiple things: party, race, gender, and religion. Now, these are the ones I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about all of them with caveats. First, I'm going to talk about religion. The amount of Christians I would have voted for the presidency would be... Okay, I know you're going to hate me for this, but remember when I said earlier that I was going to list people who were close to me voting for them? I missed one, and now I'm going to say him here. John D. Haywood, progressive from North Carolina. Now, he was really good on a lot of things. He was not so good on gun control and a lot of other small aspects. Like he was not the best for gun control. On a lot of the other things, like universal health care, he was like on the nose. And one small caveat is, I'm gonna play you a clip from when he was in the New Hampshire lesser known candidates forum, and you'll hear one noticeable thing about him.
Essentially going back to the Johnson-Kennedy tax plan. That was, as I said before, fair.
He was sick. And believe it or not, that's his only appearance in any news. So anyways, the amount of Christians I would have voted for is 27 Christians. I would have also voted for 7 deists or semi-deists. I include like many of the founding fathers in that semi-deist category. I would have voted for 1 Jewish person, 1 semi-Buddhist person. That would be Henry Wallace, because he was semi-Buddhist. And 9, I have no clue what their religious affiliation is. I technically should have put them in Christian, because it's very likely to assume, but I don't know. And 5 atheists. Those 5 atheists being Rocky Anderson. Atheist / agnostic. Those ones would be Rocky Anderson, Jill Stein, Lawrence Lessig, Vincent Hallinan, and Mike Gravel. And in regards to gender, I would have voted for 45 males and 5 females. In regards to race, I would have voted for 45 white people, 4 black people, and 1 Arabic. Now, in regards to party, I would have voted for 1 Justice Party candidate, 1 Libertarian, backup, Mike Gravel. 4 times I would have voted for the Green Party candidate, with 2 individuals. 1 time I would have voted for the New Alliance Party candidate. 3 times I would have voted for the Citizens / Consumers Party candidate. 1 time I would have voted for the People's Party candidate. 1 time I would have voted for the Freedom and Peace Party candidate. 2 times I would have voted for the third Progressive Party candidate. 2 times I would have voted for the Farmer Labor Party candidate. 1 time I would have voted for the second Progressive Party candidate. 1 time I would have voted for the Bull Moose Party candidate. 5 times I would have voted for the Socialist Party candidate with 2 individuals. 1 time I would have voted for the Social Democratic Party candidate. The Democratic candidate, we'll get back to that in a second. 1 time I would have voted for the People's/Populist Party candidate, or technically 3 times if you want to include, William Jennings Bryan as an official Populist Party candidate. 1 time I would have voted for the Union Labor Party candidate. 3 times I would have voted for the Greenback Party candidate. 1 time I would have voted for the Equal Rights Party candidate. 1 time I would have voted for the Radical Democracy Party candidate. 4 times or 5 times, depending on your view of the National Union Party candidate, I would have voted for the Republicans, with 4 individuals making up those Republicans. 1 time I would have voted for the Free Soil Party candidate. 4 times I would have voted for the Liberty Party candidate, or with 2 individuals. 1 time I would have voted for the Whig Party. 2 times I would have voted for the National Republican Party candidate. 8 times I would have voted for the Democratic Republicans, with 4 candidates, with 4 individuals running for the candidacies. And 5 times I would have voted for an independent, with 3 individuals: George Washington, Eugene McCarthy, and Ralph Nader. Now, for the Democrats, I would have voted for a Democratic Party candidate 22 times. Now, bear with me. Let me explain. 13 individuals, okay, because, a lot of them ran for president multiple times, even if they didn't win the presidency. 7 of them would have been primary candidates only. 5 would have been general candidates only. And 4 are backup candidates. With that, we conclude who I would have voted for in every single presidential election. I issue Mr. Beat a challenge to do this himself, or someone else. Literally, any of my subscribers can do this if they want, but I want Mr. Beat to do it because it'd be fun. But anyways, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested for more political content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Quora. What should I do for my season finale now since my fans fucked it up? Leave your response in the comment section below.